let me also give you the opportunity to respond to Mr. Picard's testimony just a little while ago about a statement which he claims that you made with respect to priorities. And in that regard, it is correct, is it not? Because we have looked at the May 10th, 2001 guidance for preparing fiscal year 2003 budgets, in which you indicate your priorities. There are 5 goals, strategic goals, laid out there. It does not appear that terrorism was one of them. Is that correct?
Let me make an explanation here, because I think I welcome as well this opportunity. The day preceding, on May the 9th, I met with the Senate Appropriations Committee and was asked about my priorities. I said my #1 priority was to protect the people of the United States against terrorism. The Department of Justice, required by the Congress to have a strategic plan, followed that plan. The plan was developed in the year 2000 by my predecessor and had a set of strategic goals. They're listed here early in the book, and they're similar to the goals. They are, as a matter of fact, the goals which were used in large measure for the May 10th memorandum. And they cite some additional goals to terrorism. There's no question about that. Let me just go, because our time is limited.
Sorry, did you say in the prior plan there were citations to counterterrorism?
Well, there was no major goal of counterterrorism, but under, let's not sell Ms. Reno short, under the first objective.
She's not short.
Pardon?
I can testify she's not short.
Well, I won't make any personal comment.
I'm short.
And under the Keep America Safe by Enforcing Federal Criminal Laws, she did have deter and detect terrorist incidents, and this is the kind of, let me just cut to the chase here to see where we were. Let our money do the talking. In the budgets proposed prior to September 11th, the total CT increases were 72% greater than the total increases for drugs and gun prosecutions combined. Now, those were the other issues that were listed as priorities of the department. What we had was a combined total of increases of $683.1 million for drugs and gun prosecutions. We had a combined counterterrorism-related budget increase of $1,175.2 million, 72% higher for counterterrorism-related items than for items related to the other priorities which we had stated, drug interdiction and the prosecution of gun criminals. Now, I don't mean to discount those priorities. Thousands of people die on our streets as a result of gun crimes, and we're very grateful for our record there. But let the record be clear that when it comes to where the appropriation was, that we had a $1.175 billion increase for counterterrorism in those first 2 budgets, a $0.683 billion or $683 million increase on drugs and guns.
To explore resource allocations, the joint inquiry reviewed documents, requested additional information on specific issues, and interviewed knowledgeable personnel. Documents included formal NFIP submissions and responses, staffing descriptions from major counterterrorism offices, such as the Counterterrorism Center at CIA and the FBI's Counterterrorism Division. CIA and FBI submissions requesting additional resources, supplemental appropriations, and justifications. National Security Council mandated reviews of counterterrorism spreading throughout the intelligence community, Inspector General reports, internal assessments of the effort against al-Qaeda, and many other documents. Because existing documentary information was insufficient, the joint inquiry asked the intelligence community for additional information. This included identifying the number of personnel who worked directly on al-Qaeda and terrorism, determining and reviewing budget methodology, calculating full-time equivalent staffing levels, and ascertaining resources that other groups received. Interviews related to resources spanned a range of policy officials, intelligence community leaders, and budget officers from the agencies and former OMB officials. Policy officials at the National Security Council and Department of Defense were asked about the level of resources provided for intelligence and for counterterrorism. Based on this review, it appears that the intelligence community has only a limited sense of what is budgeted for missions such as counterterrorism. Agencies submit budget requests for field agents or spy satellites, for instance, but do not systematically track the missions for which these capabilities are used. As a result, methodologies vary from estimating how much is spent on terrorism. Moreover, because intelligence community managers do not use this data for day-to-day operations, little information was readily available in response to our data requests. The intelligence community cannot quickly determine how or where money is spent, or which missions its personnel are carrying out. Intelligence community budgeting procedures thus make it difficult to determine whether counterterrorism as a mission is properly funded. Community and components budget by capabilities, such as the number of intelligence officers or satellites, rather than by missions such as counterterrorism. Many of these capabilities, however, serve more than one function or mission, making it difficult to measure resource allocation. For example, a CIA field officer may collect on the internal policies of a country, a weapons shipment, and terrorism. According to the CIA's Associate Deputy Director for Operations for Resources, Plan, and Policies, it is difficult to measure how much is spent on counterterrorism, and the least precise area of accounting is human resources. For instance, in the field, personnel might work on several targets. Requiring them to keep track of the time they spend on particular tasks was considered, but rejected due to the administrative burden this would impose. Also, counterterrorism often entails infrastructure costs that cannot be readily allocated to a particular effort. Before fiscal year 1999, there was little effort to track counterterrorism spending because counterterrorism was not an office or an expenditure center. Counterterrorism is not limited to the CTC, and other CIA components support the effort. Finally, the CIA's accounting system focused on capabilities and resources, not on missions. In fiscal year 1999, the Office of Management and Budget, OMB, required that spending on counterterrorism be tracked. According to the CIA Budget Office's Director and Deputy Director, counterterrorism spending was calculated by determining the costs of CTC and specific counterterrorism operations for other offices. Indirect costs for those offices, like infrastructure and computers, was not included. To make these calculations, budget officers had to examine each organization in each program. While efforts are underway to reconstruct budget procedures to make data more easily retrievable, it remains difficult to determine what the intelligence community is spending on specific issues and missions. Data must be manually retrieved since budget systems do not talk to human resources systems. The effort is time and labor intensive and not repeatable because different measures are used in different years. Even the CIA report on the counterterrorism effort that was provided in response to a specific joint inquiry request required a manual reconstruction of hours worked, which is imprecise at best. Thus, the agency could provide only limited information on how its officers divided their time in 1998. A senior NSA official in testimony criticized personnel accounting procedures that focus only on one product line, such as counterterrorism, noting that cryptographers, target developers, and other personnel contribute to products even if they are not formally part of the product lines. However, NSA was unable to provide a procedure to account for the contributions of those personnel. As a result of the ambiguities, the intelligence community often does not know how much it spends on particular efforts, making it difficult to compare funding across missions. Moreover, different components of the community use different measures to determine how much they spend on missions. There is no universally accepted method to measure indirect costs, such as infrastructure. In light of these difficulties, the estimates of spending on counterterrorism that follow should be viewed as rough outlines, not detailed pictures of overall expenditures. Since counterterrorism is not an explicit budget category for the intelligence community, it is difficult to estimate the percentage of community capabilities dedicated to counterterrorism. Community budget officers advised that components of the community use different measures to estimate total sums spent on counterterrorism. These measures are not consistently used within agencies. Finally, indirect costs are often excluded from these figures. In addition to this data problem, the White House refused to allow the intelligence community to respond to joint inquiry requests for information regarding budgets and budgetary decision-making. Many important resource issues revolved around the question of who said no to requests for additional funds for counterterrorism. However, the White House invoked executive privilege and refused to permit the intelligence community to provide free decisional data on budget requests that were made by agencies before they were sent to Congress. The joint inquiry received some of the information indirectly, but large gaps remain. The White House also invoked the executive privilege in response to requests for information on spending for covert action. Overall finding of intelligence agencies and associated personnel levels fell or remained roughly even in constant dollars from the end of the Cold War until September 11, 2001, hindering the community's response to the growing terrorist threat. As a chart would show that the intelligence community budget fell or remained even as constant dollars throughout the 1990s.